Shiner. Yeah, a couple things I want to talk about tonight. It's kind of just been sitting back watching the events unfold, and I don't know if you listened to the show last week, but they really get angry when you start getting into certain things, and just had to go through a lot of crap all week long. The satellite attack, weapons, assassination attempts, all that stuff, just dealing with it all week long. Just kind of really drained the energy right out of me. So back at it tonight, and I don't expect anything to be much different. Except tonight I don't really plan on talking about Paul unless my father leads me there. Seems to be a real sore spot of theirs. Can't be exposing truth out there. They want everybody under their control and under their little narratives, and there's always that rebel crowd that breaks free and becomes a threat to them, and it's basically what me and my gang represent. The rebel crowd that can't be controlled because we follow the Father. And when you follow the Father, there's certain things that just become a part of your life. You ask for the truth in all things. You seek Him for the truth, and not what's shoved down your throats by mainstream religion and control, because that's always controlled by Lucifer. That's how he controls things. I can remember years ago, and I had a huge dream. I wanted to set up a safe zone in the Ozarks and prepare a safe place for the Father's people and do all this stuff. And, of course, that never happened because people just do not fund this ministry. But I can remember back, too, there was militias were getting big back then. People were getting involved with the militias, and the Father had told me no. It's all controlled by the government at the top. And if you look at all the militias in the United States, the way they operate is to get everything into like a political control where you have a governing council or a union head or body or something, and all the militias are controlled by a council or whatever they want to call it out on the West Coast and the Northwest. And so that's how the government got control, because they're always at the top. The Father had told me they're at the top. So all these militias who think they're rebels and free from government control, you're kidding yourselves. They're within your ranks. There's agents all over the place. I mean, you can't even have a ministry online and not be inundated with agents. Half my Facebook list is probably government agents and interns, and that's why so many warriors don't even go on the internet. They don't even get involved with social media. They stay out in the deserts and the byways, and I hear on occasion from them. Many I don't even hear from. I just know they're out there. Father tells me. But that's, everything is controlled, folks. Everything. Anyone who's a big mouth is being watched, attacked. Several big mouths dropping dead over the years with, heart attacks, brain aneurysms, car accidents, just all typical ways that they use for assassinations to shut up big mouths. And that's Christians or not. I mean, it's bad enough when you have protection from the Lord to be standing up and speaking out against the New World Order and the Satan crowd that rules the world. And especially more dangerous if you're not even one of his and you're standing up and being patriotic because you love your country and being killed for it. And so it's almost like you're signing your death warrant There's no free speech in America. You're watched, you're hounded, you're harassed, you're put on a list. You know, several years ago, I used to hear a lot about stuff going on, and you know, a lot of people would probably get this, you know, angry and discouraged and things like that. I used to think it was fun. You know, the stuff I would hear coming out of D.C., I used to think was so much fun. Kept things interesting. I was always on a death list. I was number 3 on the death list at the time. I think right now I'm number 1. They took Chavez out. He was number 1. He was the president of, what was that, Venezuela, and it took him out finally. It took him about 10 years to get him to succumb to cancers that they'd given him. And Pastor Manning and me were right there in the top 3. Obama couldn't stand Pastor Manning. Manning used to always call him the long-legged, whatever, long-legged Mac Daddy, I think it is. I like Manning. He's funny. He's the guy that runs that breakfast kitchen or whatever, a la Atla Ministries out of Harlem. Richard Manning, I think his name is, and so yeah, he was number 2 for a while, and I was sitting at 3, and now I think I'm up to number 1 since Chavez died, and Manning's moved down to number 2 because the real Obama's not even here anymore. Back in 2012, they went to strictly just all clones, replacements of him. The real one was killed in 2012 along with Hillary that year. And so since 2012, there's been this vacuum. And it's really, you know, you watch the downward spiral begin in that year, and now it's 4 years later, and, you know, from someone who knows, first-hand experience with the D.C. crowd, there's no humans left there. There's no humans left. And I told you last year, 2015, that 2016 was going to be a year of total dominance and soul scalping. That they were going to finish up their program and dominance of all the soul scalping that had been started years ago. And now we're in August 2016. It's been 8 months. And, you know, everything I said that they were going to do, they've done. And now that they've done it, there's nothing to do but wait. Because it's boring. It's stupid. I mean, I have no one to talk to. I used to have people in D.C., whether they were friends or foes, hated me or liked me. Most of them hate me. But at least they were human. Now I don't even have that to deal with. I don't have any humans to deal with because they've all been soul sculpted and replaced. And if you read my book, Interview with the Devil, and then I was talking to Lucifer about this, and he had said that, you know, everything he had said, I had already said last year, because I already knew what they were going to do without even talking to him. He just confirms everything. They already own everything at the federal level, obviously. Congress, D.C., Pentagon, military. Everybody at the top levels has already been soul scalped. And so this year what they were working on was going all the way to state. And they already had the state levels. And they were getting down to just the local levels. And it's pretty much a wash now. There's just nobody in politics that hasn't been soul scalped, replaced. You can't even join a local council or whatever. You've got to be a Mason first. They've got it tied in with Masonries and the Eastern Star for women. There's no one on TV that hasn't signed a contract, that hasn't signed a dotted line. And when you sign the dotted line, obviously you're selling your soul to the devil. But now it's almost like you forgot to read the small print because, yeah, Satan owns your soul when you sign the dotted line. You're saying you can have your soul when you die. But he isn't promising you any kind of longevity either. And so what they've been doing is just killing them off and replacing them. That's what you get when you make a deal with the devil. He says, you make a deal, I break a deal. Exactly his exact words. You don't make a deal with the devil. That's stupid. And so all the people now who make these deals just instantly get replaced. It used to be a slower process, I guess is what I'm saying. They used to at least give people time, a couple of years to enjoy their wealth and accumulations. Now the only ones that get to enjoy it are the athletes because although I've seen plenty of them soul sculpt, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the Olympics. I've seen plenty of people with the slit eyes and the clone snowflake eyes. I don't know how else to describe it. It looks like their pupils are snowflakes. Seen a lot of that. I kind of figured back in 2012 that was the last human Olympics we were going to have. I think I even said something back then. So, yeah, you're looking at probably a lot of them. There's a lot of newcomers coming in. A lot of them still look like kids and still look human, but the ones who are dominating, you can see it in their eyes. You can feel it through the TV screen. Some of them, people that are chip implanted, have really, really strong auras, even if it's a tape you're looking at. You just look at them and you can feel that chip implant in them. And I don't know. Maybe I'm just a weird one. I've always been sensitive to energies and things like that. And so, we're sitting around twiddling our thumbs waiting for, what I'm waiting for is the arrival of the two beasts of Revelation, chapter 13. Chat room, thanks a lot. Sounding good. Two beasts of Revelation, chapter 13, the Antichrist and false prophet. And, this month I just want to get into the finer details of prophecies because, Bible prophecy, because there's so much wrong stuff out there. There's just so much garbage that's being put out there. I love the one where they're not actual beasts, they're just systems. It's talking about governments. You don't take a government and bind it and cast it into a lake of fire. They always forget, when you get into Bible prophecy, it's not one book that you have to memorize. It's at least 15 prophets. You got to know all of them. Daniel, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Hosea, Joel, all the prophets. And then you got the New Testament. You've got John and Peter, Matthew. And they've all had insight on the last days, what would be happening in the last days world. And so it's not just one person. You got to study all of it. And then have the knowledge of discernment of symbolism or literalism. Are you saying something in metaphor, symbolically, or is it literal? Well, in Revelation 19:20, the future of the Antichrist and false prophet, the two beasts mentioned in Revelation chapter 13, is described because they're both cast alive into a lake of fire burning with brimstone. So these are actual beings that are coming. They're not systems, they're not governments, they're not economies. They're beings. They're literal beings coming to fulfill and play these true roles. Now, there's some wiggle room they have with the Antichrist role. And I've been saying this for years because I saw it back when Bush was president. And I know I got a lot of new listeners since then, so I'll reiterate a little bit from back when Bush Jr. was president. And Bush Jr. actually was qualified and fulfilled the role of the Red Horseman. And what he did was bring perpetual war to the world with his fake war on terrorism. It's a war that you can never end. There's no winner, losers. It's just a perpetual war. And that's what the Red Horse is. It's perpetual war. And George Bush brought that to the world. He was the Red Horse rider. George Bush Jr. And so now we sit and wait for the other two to appear, the Pale Horse and the Black Horse. And I've told you who these beings are. They're Maitreya and Sananda. Now, I know the churches have a million different explanations on these two horses. One is disease and plagues, yeah. And then one's famine, yeah. But you know what? There's riders. Each horse has a rider, which means there is a person who brings that horse in, who rides that horse. George Bush rode the Red Horse. He was brought into perpetual war and terrorism. And these two beings, Sananda and Maitreya, are bringing in the famine and the pigs and the plagues and pestilences. And if you pay attention to the Pale Horse, because that's always the one I focus on the most, because that is a character I deal with all the time. His name is Sananda. The churches know him as Jesus. He's coming as the false prophet. He's Paul's false prophet. I've always said, if you read the New Testament 5 times, you would understand very clearly they're talking about two different messiahs in the New Testament. There's one Messiah taught by the apostles and Yahushua, because Yahushua was the Messiah. And then there's another Messiah brought to the forefront by Paul. And Jesus Christ is Paul's Messiah. Because Yahushua ben David, the real name of the Son of God, was the Messiah the apostles taught, and the one they followed, and the one they wrote about. And then Saul Paul arrives on the scene, attributes a million things to himself, becomes the great imposter, the great imposer, creates his own Messiah, his own gospel, says, I bring to you a new gospel, because those is championed by divine revelations, which he calls mysteries, because he just makes it up as he goes. Creates his own Messiah, Jesus Christ. You won't find that name in Jewish history because it didn't exist. Say, oh, it's a Greek translation. Yeah, it is. Well, what's so difficult about Yahushua ben David? That was the Son of God's real name. He went to the Gentile nations and built Christianity because all the Christian Jews rejected him. So he went to people who knew nothing about Jewish customs and ways, and the Yahushua ben David they were all worshiping and following, and created a whole new religion, and they were called Christians. And that was Paulianity. So this Sananda, this Pale Horse rider that's coming, is this Jesus that Paul promoted, that Paul built, Paul created. And he's going to come as the champion of the churches. And at this point, whether all this warning and writing and talking and yelling has done any good, will come to a head, because he's going to lead them into worshiping the beast and joining Lucifer's kingdom on earth. And at that point, they're either going to have to accept or reject their little Paul in Jesus Christ combo. Because if they follow them, they're going to follow them into the lake of fire. That's why I've spent so much time, because this Sananda coming, the churches have his very picture hanging up in them. That's why Yeshua says, I'm not even in the churches today, because they have Sananda all in them. You look at the church bulletins, you walk in the door, you're given a church bulletin, and you have Sananda on it, or you have the cross. Yeshua hates the cross. One of the first things I learned when I started praying for the truth in all things, I used to be, as a kid, I never wore a lot of jewelry, but when I wore it, I loved crosses. I always had my cross necklace on, my cross earrings, whatever. It's crosses. That's what I liked. The first thing he had me do was get rid of the crosses. Get rid of the crosses. He doesn't glory in death. It's like somebody posted something on my Facebook a couple of weeks ago. That was hilarious. It might have been on my wall. But it was something like, if someone who was assassinated by a gun was returned to Earth, and everybody was honoring him by holding up rifles or something, I wish I'd saved it, because it was so funny. More truth than people realize. He doesn't want to be reminded of his death. Death is a curse. He hung on the cross and died for our sins. The victory was in his resurrection. And so people keep putting him on the cross over and over and over again. They keep putting him back on the cross. That's why the Satanists blend right in with Christians, and you'd never know who they really are, because they love cross jewelry too. They love the fact that Yahushua was nailed on the cross and had to suffer and die. They revel in it. And here the Christians constantly remembrance of that. He doesn't want remembrance of that. The victory was in the resurrection. He defeated death. So Satan always puts him back on the cross. And if you notice the Catholic religion, they always put him as a child in Mary's arms. He hardly ever gets to grow up and be a man in Catholicism. He's always a baby in Mary's arms. They denigrate him. They beat him up over and over and over again, mocking him by putting him as a baby and putting him on the cross. So as a believer in the Most High and His Son, you should be repulsed by that. You shouldn't have anything in common with that. You should disassociate from that. Break away from it. It's mockery. It's criticism. Just break away from all that, folks. So Sananda's going to arrive, and he brings the forces of hell with him. He doesn't just bring plagues and pestilences. He brings the forces of hell follow after him, which means shortly after he arrives to Earth, we're going to see huge invasions of the forces of hell. So the black horse just goes without saying, famine, because it's going to be pure chaos. It's going to be no food distribution at that point. Nobody's going to go to their 9 to 5 when the forces of hell are here and terrorizing everyone on Earth. Plagues and pestilences that are happening. People dropping over dead, falling over dead. Let me tell you something. These mystery diseases that hit the Earth, when they really don't know where they come from and they stumble in their explanations trying to find out exactly what they are, that's because they're alien diseases that were planted here, brought here by the aliens to wipe out mankind. It's called cattle culling. They cull the cattle. They keep the populations down. And so something like Black Death that was introduced, killed over 200 million people in the 14th century, that was by them. It was an alien disease. They've been doing this little pestilence and plague thing for centuries. For centuries. Culling the cattle. To them, the human population is nothing but a large cattle herd. These are terms I see in the Bible codes and I have to deal with daily. I know exactly how they think. And if you're buying any of this New Age garbage where you think there's some good aliens out there, I got some beach property in Arizona for you because they all think the same way. They just lie and deceive humans. They have nothing but contempt and hatred for humans, especially when you get into the reptile branches. You get into the reptilians, the lizards, the Anunnakis, the non-human form ones. They are the absolute worst. And then you deal with the humanoid ones who are tall angels, the Nordics, the Pleiadians, the Andromeda galaxy. All the good ones are gone. The Father reinstated them. Who wanted reinstatement? That call went out a couple years ago. I've been working in the background for years, and I always said, Father, the bride won't listen. No one listens to me. I'm just going to deal with everybody else. I went to space. I've been dealing with people in space for years. And people on Earth can laugh and hem-haw because they just want to hate and they just want to be jealous and everything else. But 19.2 billion of them have been restored to the Father. Because while humans reject every message, every word I say on Earth, I just take my messages elsewhere. I spend my time elsewhere. And 19.2 billion of them have now been redeemed and restored back to the Father. And you say, how can that happen? It's His restoration. He can do what He wants. He's the Father. I went to bat for them. I went to bat for them. I fought for them at the Council of Heaven because I was able to find loopholes in the offspring of the ones who had fallen to offer the offspring redemption, a chance at redemption. I went to bat for them. $19.2 billion now. The only ones left were the ones that could not qualify. Because to be qualified to be restored and redeemed back to the Father as an angel in heaven, they had to have a certain percentage of light in them, of goodness in them. And a lot of them didn't qualify because they're so evil. And these are the ones that are deceiving mankind. These are the ones in charge of the New Agers, the posing as the Raphaels and everybody else. They do it to the Japanese all the time. The humanoid angels that are still around are pure evil and wicked, couldn't even qualify to be redeemed. Because one of the parts to being to qualify was they couldn't have been harming mankind. They couldn't have been involved with evil. That's why I always said, hey, if there's angels in heaven around the Pleiades, they're not in contact with mankind, I can tell you that. And the good ones weren't, and never have been. In fact, the Andromeda galaxy, billions of them, were the offspring of the Enochian angels who fell, the time during Enoch, when the angels fell on Mount Hermon, and they wanted to procreate with human women. They left their heavenly estates, came to procreate with human women. All of their offspring and the offspring of their offspring ended up gathering in the Andromedan galaxy, making their own place. They were never involved with wickedness on Earth, and that's why I went to bat for them. No one else had ever thought to. So the ones that are humanoid coming in contact are just as evil, because what they did was they left the Pleiades, they left Andromedians, they left all these places where the habitations of angel offspring were, and they joined Lucifer's side. See, there's two different factions in space. There was Lucifer's group, and there was all the angels that had left heaven during the Enoch era, what you could refer to as the Enoch era. There's all the ones, all the creation on earth that was destroyed in the flood. All those angels that fell were judged. But they had children, they had offspring. People don't think about this stuff. They just think angels don't produce, they don't recreate, blah, blah, blah. Go back to sleep. Well, there's a lot of us who like to think ahead, think above, and have higher knowledge than just going to sleep, sweeping things under the rug. I don't like to sweep things under the rug. I want to know what's going on. So all their offspring gathered off in space. Yes, angels have sex. Yes, they were born with the ability to do so. Just because a certain rank and group of angels doesn't sweep them all under the category of not. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been any angels at Mount Hermon even looking at human women, being tempted by them. If you look at the first creation of Adam and Lilith, the Elohim created them. Who were the Elohim? They were angels from heaven. They were a group. Doesn't matter what their rank was, what their status was, what their jobs were. The bottom line, the Elohim were angels from heaven. And they created Adam and Eve, Adam and Lilith, out of the dust of the ground. And they made them like themselves. So, hello, you had a man, you had a woman. There are male and female angels. But they would have had no clue what that had to do with a woman. Or if they were all women, they wouldn't have had a clue what to do with a man. They're both. Mankind is very aesthetically similar to heaven. I don't even know if that's the right word. I don't know how else to describe it. It's not night and day, except for the evil here on earth. That's why Lucifer incorporated so many things from heaven down to earth. He's incorporated what he knew, because that's where he lived. He's outlived everybody. He's had time to master things and master histories and rewrite histories and write textbooks and rewrite textbooks so people believe whatever narrative they're told. That's how they control. That's how he controls things. Because you can scream as much as you want to, but within 90 to 100 years, you're going to be dead. And he's still sitting in charge of everything. He's done that before. He's killed off entire generations and then just rewrote history. That's what he does. So Sananda and this Maitreya beast, these you can call them whatever you want, cosmic beings, Ashtar Council. That's what they are. It's what the New Agers call them, the Ashtar Command. It's a council that rules above the earth. Satan's people, mostly Lilith. They rule as a council. And there's different councils. Lilith runs things, don't get me wrong, because probably the bulk of things more so than Lucifer, because he doesn't pay as much attention to detail as she does. But she also has her own group, and this whole Ashtar thing is like her group. Because Lucifer still has his little reptiles, what you call the reptiles, the lizards. And they've been the offspring of the ones who fell with him throughout the ages. And so they've always been separate because they were with him a long time before Lilith was ever created and rebelled. When Lilith rebelled against Father and left Adam, that's when she began her whole Her whole thing. She was always with Lucifer. She's always been in love with him. They're like the Romeo and Juliet of eternity because they've been together since the dawn of time. And she runs all the stuff for him. She runs witchcraft, the sisterhood, warlocks, goddess worship. That's all her. God and goddess worship. Because she always throws herself in the mix of everything. She's even got herself in that Baphomet thing. Because it's her and Lucifer and a goat in a mix. Those three combined and you have Baphomet. Because goat was always the popular representation of Lucifer as Pan, the Egyptian goat. That's what that comes from. So she always has her hands in things. Lucifer's always had his reptile group, his lizard group. They weren't always lizards. They were the ones who fell. You have to understand that when Lucifer had his war in heaven, that war lasted for 1,000 years. And then they were all cast out. They set up Orion as their home base, the Orion constellation. And even now, everybody involved with aliens, all that knows that reptilians are all over the Orion constellation. It's their home base, and that whole belt thing is portals, and they line up with the pyramids on Earth, and it has a connection to the whole belt of Orion and the whole Orion constellation. That's where he was for a long time until the Elohim and Father recreated Earth. Because you can't replenish something that never existed before, because Genesis 1 says the earth was replenished. In other words, it was rebuilt, remade. Because it already existed before. Earth is very, very old. I don't understand that. I think all the scientists are lying. Because the earth they know is only 7,000 years old. Well, that's true, but it existed long before that time. It's just been destroyed. Several times. The earth we know as humans, as mankind, is about 7,000 years old. But it's existed long before that. But anyway, all of those from Orion who were with him, and you know, angels procreate, and they're not immortal, but they can live for a long time, especially because they're in the fallen state. Angels in heaven live forever. They're immortal, but Satan's people are all fallen. They were all cursed. They're in a fallen state. So they're only going to live about 1,000 or 2,000 years, and they're going to die. But they have offspring, and the offspring go on and on and on. So the people that are with him now are the children of the ones who fell with him originally in heaven. Now, I can guarantee you anything that they don't even know what their real history is. I can guarantee it. He's lied to them. He's probably made up some kind of history. Because I can almost guarantee that none of them know that he used to be a son of God. He was a son of God. He was in heaven with God. He was one of his sons. I bet none of them know that. I bet none of them know that he warred against heaven and rebelled against the Father. The prodigal son. I bet none of them know. He's probably rewritten and advised their own history to where they don't even know where they're from, what the truth is. But that group's always been with him. They were the ones that took over Mesopotamia, because when the Elohim had created Adam and Lilith in the Garden of Eden, they were watching. They figured out what was going on, and they got a portal entranceway into the Garden of Eden so that when the angels would leave, they left every day at dusk. That's when Lucifer would come down into the Garden of Eden and seduce Lilith. They produced a portal way in. And so they also had a gate, and what we know now is the Persian Gulf. That's the ancient Mesopotamian area that's now under like 100 miles of sand. Used to be one of the ancient wonders of the world, Babylon. That's where they set up shop. That was actually where the first city was. It was over there. Cain built it. I don't think he built the first city. I think Lucifer's people, that whole group had, because it was a real high-tech center in math, area of center, tech. Let's just say tech. A high-tech center. These were angels over there. Fallen angels, albeit. But they were smart. They were masters of science and math and astronomy and all that kind of stuff and tech. And so they had a city going over there. They had a place of residence there. Because when Lilith got banned from the earth, the children she had with Lucifer before she got banned, his people over at Mesopotamia, they took her children and raised them. She had like 6 or 7 kids. And she had to leave on Earth when she got banned off of Earth. And so his people had taken her kids and raised them. She may have had more than that, because she had the whole Asians races. Yeah. But they raised her kids, and Lilith got banned from the earth, and she, of course, still found her way back down here. But she was in a fallen state at that point. And at that point, Adam was recreated. Adam was put to sleep, and he was given a new kind of body. And then, because his first body didn't have a rib cage, he wasn't human. The first one, it was created like an angel, like the Elohim that had created him and Lilith both. Looks like a male, but didn't have a human body. So then, after him and Lilith had split up, they had to rebuild Adam, so that the father could then take a rib out and create Eve. So his body was kind of transformed through a transformation, and the rib was taken, and that's what they used to create Eve with. Father did. So then Eve was the second woman created. Lilith was banned off the earth. Eve was created. Then the same thing happened again. Lucifer seduced Eve. Lilith was making her way back down to earth, found out how to have her way to get down here again. I don't even know where I'm going with all this. I forgot what my whole point is. But either way. Because I was talking about the differences between Lilith and Lucifer's groups. The reptiles and the Ashtar Council, because they're tall grays. Most of them are tall grays, because Lilith's people, all almond eye races are Lilith's people. Even though they're going to manufacture bodies like this Jesus, this Sananda that's coming to Earth, I hate him. If I ever hated anybody so much and bad that's ever been created, be him. That's a righteous hatred. He's just such a scumbag. I can't stand him. I hate having to deal with him. I hate having to fight with him. That's because I hate him. But he's going to come as Sananda. He's playing the false prophet role. They have these human manufactured bodies. He is tall. He is like probably close to 7 feet tall. Maitreya is shorter. Maitreya isn't as tall as Sananda. He isn't now, and I don't think when they arrive that he'll be as tall as Sananda. Sananda is very tall, very skinny, very effeminate, where Maitreya is shorter. He's mean. He's a rough guy to be around. He's just very volatile. Very volatile. It's like bipolar, and he's always beating people. He always has He has these monikers about him. He likes to walk around with a bullwhip and just whip people, beings around him. He's not a nice guy. He's the one that's coming, playing the Islam Mahdi. That's the Maitreya. And Sananda's coming to play Asu, Emmanuel, Jesus. There's a bunch of different names. When you look at the horse of Revelation, or not the horse, but the beast of Revelation chapter 13, and I was going to get into that tonight, and I've gone on rabbit trails. Maybe I'll do it next week. But the names of blasphemies, he has all these horns and crowns with the names of blasphemies. That just fits. That fits him to a T, even though the first beast is the Antichrist, is the Mahdi. The first beast is going to align a 10-nation Islam confederation together. And what's interesting, I'll bring this up while I have time, is that back in the day, when Bush Jr. was a rider with Red Horse and stuff, and they were preparing for him to play the role of Antichrist, the government's fully aware of Bible prophecy and the things that will play out. And so they were ready with Clinton, and they were ready with George Bush Jr. because they know it's the President of the United States that fulfills the prophecy of Antichrist's role. What they don't understand is that the Antichrist role, the United States gives the rule and reign. All the nations of the world are going to give their authority and control up to the UN, because the UN rules over everybody. So it's not in particular has to be the President of the United States. It's like if Hillary had been president, she was going, and probably still would if she gets in, which I doubt, she was going to give the authority and control of the United States over to the UN. So whoever the leader is at the UN that she gives authority to would fulfill the role of the Antichrist. But with Obama, we already know that Maitreya uses Obama's body to speak through, like Satan spoke through Hitler a lot. Maitreya speaks through Obama a lot. And he can operate and work through Obama, because Obama's just a clone. It's just a body. And so Maitreya can just, walk in. He can just be a walk-in. He can just take over Obama's body and act and speak through him. And so they always get prepared for this kind of deadly wound, being healed stuff, the whole scenario where the beast has a deadly wound that's healed. And so they always kind of prepare for this departure, for the president to be killed, and then re-arrive on Earth as a godly being, not necessarily godly, I shouldn't say that word, fake divine being, more like it, or then the world worships him as God. They're preparing this whole scenario with Obama. They're preparing it because I used to see it with George Bush Jr., I saw it with Bill Clinton, I saw what Hillary would have done, and now I'm seeing it with Obama. Because him and Maitreya are already linking and correlating together, because Maitreya just takes him over. Maitreya could come play his role on Earth through Obama. It wouldn't bother him a bit, because he already does it. Or he could just come in his egghead body. Maitreya has one of these Egyptian eggheads. Remember the old Egyptians? Those big, tall eggheads, and you see those elongated skulls? That was actually stuff Maitreya had been playing with, because he was into genetic tampering, and they were trying to create this different genetic type of race, and so that was all done through genetic tampering, and he even did it to himself. And so he literally has an egghead that he gave to himself because his head ended up growing that way because of the stuff he was tampering with. So he wears that chic head costume to kind of hide it. The ancient Egyptians were actually from they're offspring from Mars. They're actually from Mars, and you have to realize that Lilith had kids, and they took people off before the flood hit, and they put them on Mars and different planets till the flood waters receded. But Lilith had all kinds of offspring, even when she was banned from Earth. And they're all part of her kids, you know, they're her kids. But they also take the DNA, like they have. There was a prophecy about Adam and Eve's bodies being found and plundered. And what that actually meant was that they would take DNA. They would get a hold of Adam's and Eve's DNA and then use it to clone. I have always seen Maitreya associated with Cain, so I assume he is a clone of Cain. I don't know, he might just be a clone of Adam, except for the head thing. Adam certainly didn't have an elongated skull, but Adam was shorter. He wasn't as tall as Cain. Cain was tall. And Adam had dark black hair and blue eyes. And so, I don't know. Sometimes you look at Maitreya and you're like, where did they clone that body from? Was that Adam? Was that Cain? You know, think of Cain. You talk about Cain. It's not Cain. And I was even asking Lilith what Cain looked like, and from the description she was giving me, that's certainly not Maitreya's description. He looks more like an Adam, except for I think Maitreya has brown eyes, but it's hard to tell in photos because even if you have blue eyes, sometimes, depending on the photography, your eyes can look brown. Blue can be really hard to do on photographs. I'm getting kicked off already. 90 seconds. This show went quick. So we'll get back into this next week since I didn't even get halfway through the info I was going to give out. We're talking about two beasts of Revelation coming. Give you some background tonight, some insight. And we'll get back into it next week. So let me stay on here, folks. You can go to SherryShriner.com, hit the donate link at the top of the page. Let me stay on the air, keep my websites up. Till next week, everybody. God bless.